What's up in Soccer We Trusters? It's only me and Heath Pearce today, but chuck it. You know, what are we going to do? So the show must go on. So hit like and subscribe and let's get after it. Yes. What is up, everybody? Welcome to Tim Lightweeky's favorite podcast in Soccer We Trust. I'm Jimmy Trashcan Cream Cheese Conrad, also known as Jim, alongside our resident left back, Hollywood Heath Pearce. But we are without our resident big timer, Charlie Davies, who at this very moment is doing Europa League coverage on Paramount Plus, which is very cool to see because our little baby's all grown up and he's all grown up and he's all grown up. And shout out to all you movie buffs that know that line. But Heath, Chuck or no Chuck, we got to keep this moving forward. How's your week going so far?
My week's good. You know, I miss Chuck dearly, but it's like one of those things where, you know, he's gone off to college. He says he'll come home every holiday, but, you know, it's TBD whether or not, you know, then he meets some new friends and those friends want to go somewhere on the holidays. And then, you know, spring break, he's going on trips. So I fear we're just going to have to make peace. I'm just kidding. Chuck's coming back. Of course he is. But yeah, I'm having a good week. Jimmy, how's yours?
Yeah, it's going great. I was down here for the Ted Lasso premiere. I'm currently in LA at my dad's house. He was a musician, so I got a whole bunch of drum equipment behind me. But yeah,
is that true? He's a musician. That's great.
Yeah.
Will he give drum lessons? I haven't done drums in like 10 years, and I want drum lessons, Jimmy.
Well, you know what? I'll ask him, but I in particular didn't get that gene, so I moseyed over to the athletic side. Well, it's still an argument. I put quotes around athletic, but I was something, and it wasn't music. So
hey, but you were also a late developer, Jimmy. So you might not be too late on the old music front.
That's true. I'm a bit of a late bloomer, so maybe I can figure it out when I get closer to 50 years old. All right, well, we're talking about stuff and fun stuff and some exciting things that are happening, especially for our Charlie Davies. There is something pretty big happening for CBS Sports and Paramount Plus in particular. And Charlie is going to make an appearance on the show, and producer Alex is going to roll that clip because Charlie's got some big news for us. Roll it, Alex.
We trust fam. Jimmy Trash Can. Cheese, cream cheese, Conrad. Heath, Hollywood Pearce. I miss you guys. Sorry I couldn't be.
Doesn't even know our names.
But I'm in London.
You forgot our names.
I'm still bringing In Soccer We Trust to London just to talk about the Golazo network. We're launching a soccer-specific, 24/7 soccer-specific channel on CBS Sports. You can't miss it. And, of course, Morning Footy, the show, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. every day. We're giving you that. Me, Jenny Chu, Susanna Collins, Alexis Guerreros, Nico Cantor. I mean, you can't mess with this. Let's go. So I hope to see you guys soon. I'll be on the next pod, of course. But this is massive. We're changing the game here. And you guys, we all get to do it together. Let's go.
All right, so there's Chuck trying to hype up his other teammates without like being disrespectful to us, Heath.
Yeah, Jimmy, there's a few things. One, I'm super excited about this new show and this new channel and everything that's going on. But one, obviously, in the presence of greatness, he forgot the greatness from which he came and forgot our names, our titles.
He said cheese before cream, and
and he said,
I don't know if I can forgive him.
Heath Hollywood Pearce, and it's Hollywood Heath Pearce, but like, you know, semantics. And now I'm just wondering, like, man, is he like already in the process of healing, like for having left us behind?
Listen, I watched that, and I think they should have given him a second take because he was all over the place.
Yeah, man. Charlie, just
all over the place.
Just go with it, you know?
Just go with it. Just go.
You know, he kept going with those Arthur fists too together. I just, you know, we're just jealous, Jimmy. So we're gonna keep on.
No, we are.
Yeah.
But to your point, absolutely thrilled that this is going to be the first of its kind 24/7 soccer channel, and it's going to be free. You can find it on Pluto TV as well, Paramount Plus and any and CBS Sports' app. So it's going to be a lot of cool things, including the morning show, as he mentioned. I mean, 2 hours talking footy is pretty sick, and I'm excited to see all those personalities. We're friends with everybody on that roster of talent, and so it's going to be very cool. I don't know if you saw the promo though, Heath. We got a little shout out. It was, well, we didn't get a shout out. Me and you were in it, and Charlie was talking. So I feel like we're in, baby. We're in. You know?
Is that true? I haven't seen the promo.
Oh yeah, the promo came out, and it was rolled into the 8-minute video that when Kate Abdu was talking about it, and yeah, we were there. It was us at the World Cup, and Charlie was hyping something up. But you see me and you smiling, so we made the final cut, man. We made the.
You know what? You know how many times I've taken credit for being in the background of a famous person and been like, yeah, so me and Ben Affleck, we were at this premiere together, and that sort of thing. So
well, speaking of premieres, what a segue. I went to the Ted Lasso premiere the other night, and I got to see the first 2 episodes of season 3. And I don't know how many Ted Lasso fans are out there, but if you are, you're going to be thrilled because the first 2 are really going to set the stage for an incredible rest of the season. And so it was exciting to be there and to kind of rub shoulders with some of the cast and have a good time. I saw Sasha Kleshtin there, so it was good to see Sasha, and Greg Vanny, the LA Galaxy coach, was there. I asked if Steve Cherundolo was going to be there, but LAFC had to fly down to Costa Rica for their Champions League game, CONCACAF Champions League game. We'll get into the CONCACAF Champions League results here shortly, but pretty cool.
By the way, I thought Steve was on a level that he would have just jumped on the PJ from there and been able to, more of like I make my own schedule kind of level after a championship, like I can be everywhere at once when you got access to the PJ. Like
no, that's private jet. I feel you on that. He seemed a little bit disappointed he couldn't be there, but I think he knows in the back of his mind that he is a real celebrity now, and there are going to be multiple premieres in his future. So this was just one of many, right? I don't think it's that big of a deal anymore.
Yeah,
so,
that's true. That's true.
Yeah, but it was cool. It was cool to actually learn a little bit more about the plan. The season 3 might not be the end. It's almost open-ended now that there could be something else in the works, which is pretty exciting. And Tim Cook was there, the guy that runs Apple. Oh. So I could have got a selfie with him, and then I was like, I don't know. I know you guys think I'm that guy, but there are moments where I'm like, I don't know if I should be that guy at this particular moment. I'm a +1 here. I'm just trying to enjoy the experience and not try to make it about me. I know it's surprising that I'm saying that out loud, but I didn't want to make it about me. And so I didn't go get my selfie with Tim Cook, but it was cool. It was cool. And for everybody that doesn't know, Jason Sudeikis, who's Ted Lasso, the actor, his uncle is George Wendt, who is Norm on Cheers. And so I got to meet George Wendt, and I thought that was pretty cool because I watched a lot of Cheers growing up. So that was pretty neat. Yeah.
That's fair. Well, I feel like there's something about the fact that you didn't go up to Tim Cook with your old flip phone and try to take a selfie, a blurry selfie, not with the products that he'd prefer you to be using. But that's pretty cool, man. Like, it is weird, Jimmy. I think we're getting to a point in our age where like there's some nostalgia of people where like, there's the people that are younger than you and you're like, I don't know any of these people. There's the people from the show. There's celebrities that are younger than you and you're like, I'm not really connected to that TikTok influencer necessarily, but hey, this guy from Cheers, I'll go and get his autograph or his picture, or I'm just happy to see him. But I'm actually curious from everybody that's in the comments right now as Jimmy pops off to do a little reset. Do you think there's going to be a spinoff show of Ted Lasso? Should there be? Who should the spinoff show be about? What should it feature? And maybe it is end of a season 3 and that's the end of the show, or maybe there's a spinoff, or maybe there's a season 4. But who would you love to see sort of spin off into their own show? And again, I know we've talked about this. One of the things that I liked most about Ted Lasso is that when they were doing some, and maybe it wasn't even character development at the time, but they would always do, Ted Lasso would show up to these Steve Nash's showdowns that are like these charity events. And the original character was very American football hostile, a little bit dumb, like very intense, like just used all the words that you would use in football, but for soccer. And it just didn't land in the way I thought. It was actually kind of annoying by the end of the Jimmy, I'm talking about when they were developing Ted Lasso in the showdown eras. Where you'd have a live Ted Lasso. And I did not like it. I thought it was like a disrespect to the sport, like the way that they were doing it. This like, American football coach, hardcore, intense, like very in your face, like just only knew how to use these words. But like the way that it's developed into being something that it is now is like nothing short of spectacular. One, just understanding like crowd work and how you develop a character and who people would like, and being this like very human person. But it was Jimmy, I mean, you've got some close relations to the show. Obviously you were a +1 there. You've hinted at there being maybe a beyond another season. So you must have somebody on the inside, and you might, what can you tell us?
Well, I'll give a shout out to Chip Hamilton, who is the coordinating producer. And actually when the show ends, he's the first name that you see on the credits. So shout out to Chip, who in his kindness is is unbelievable, not just to me, but to anybody he interacts with. He's a superhuman being. And so I become good friends with him. It was great to see Brendan Hunt, who's Coach Beard. I'm friends with him as well. And through those two, I have been able to become, let's say, acquaintances with everybody else.
Yeah,
I'm not going to go into the friend zone yet, but definitely friends with especially some of the actors that play some of the players on the team. We've got to get to know them in some ways. But yeah, I think that there's to your point, the show has become something that people can gravitate towards. There's characters there that are fully developed, that even though it might look like they're successful on the outside, they're obviously dealing with some internal struggles. And I really like those relationships. I like the relationships of the dad, father-son stuff that's coming through the show. And so that's, some of it hits home. It's not going to hit home for everybody, of course, but it's such a special show. And the first
but it highlights the human struggle and and humanity, right? Of just just good character traits you want to see in people, bad character traits you don't. And the ones and it's unavoidable in our lives. It's just through the lens of this team and this club and the dynamics. It's pretty cool. Yeah,
it is very cool. And I think people will be pretty excited about season 3. And I also when I was here, I got to meet a guy named Dan who helps on the soccer side, the football side. So they make it, it looks as good as it possibly can on camera. And he wanted my notes after the first 2 episodes because they play Chelsea in one of the episodes. And it does look better from season 1 to season 3. They have grown a lot in this particular department. So shout out to Dan and for getting all the players there who I think were getting some shit from their friends, and family. Like, you don't really look like a proper player, and so they started to take a little bit more pride in what they were doing and how they were doing it. But I thought it looked great, and I really look forward to seeing the rest of the season. I think people will be pretty excited. I'm not actually wearing an AFC Richmond jersey right now, so shout out to AFC Richmond and Ted Lasso and the whole crew. It's going to be awesome, and hopefully we'll have one of them, one of the actors. We'll try to get Coach Beard on moving forward to see, give us some more insight on what's shaking for the future. But speaking of the future, somebody said in the chat that I have the Ted Lasso inside scoop, and you have the Gio Reyna inside scoop. Gio Reyna, Heath Pearce, came on 5 minutes into the Champions League game against Chelsea, so it was great to see him play. I thought he tired a little bit. He maybe didn't have that 90-minute fitness, which makes sense. He hadn't played in 5 games or whatever, but drawing some fouls, making some stuff happen. I mean, that's what we expect from Gio Reyna.
Yeah, I agree. I think, you want him to just be busy and get into the mix of things, and he's trying to prove something, right? And he's going to try to prove something every time he gets a chance. And I don't think that means he's trying to prove something to us necessarily, but he's trying to prove something to his coaches that I want more. So he's going to be a little bit hungry, and sometimes you deplete energy, going after it. Whereas maybe you'd, pick and choose your moments, putting in that little bit of that extra effort if you don't have that match fitness might just come into play. But it's good to see him playing. Again, I think he's going to be a huge part of the future of the national team. We actually need him to, so hopefully.
I like the fact that he got in and, I'm obviously don't want anybody to get hurt. So Julian Brandt goes out, and Julian Brandt's been playing out of his mind over the last 6 weeks or since 2023 began. And you had to play him. He was playing so well on both sides of the ball and creating so many chances. It was going to be hard for Gio to break in. But since Julian got hurt, I like that Edin Terzic, the manager for Dortmund, didn't have any other options. I mean, of course he had a couple, and Adeyemi was out as well, so he didn't maybe have his normal choices that he would have liked, and I think Adeyemi would have made a difference in that Chelsea game for leg 2 after scoring the winner in leg 1. But I like that Gio just probably knew and could settle into the position a little bit, not thinking, hey, I only have 15 minutes to prove myself, or he had 85 there to kind of get into the game, find the flow, maybe even help establish the rhythm for them going forward. Unfortunately, for those that didn't see it, Borussia Dortmund ended up losing to Chelsea 2-0. I don't think Chelsea they'd only won 2 out of 14 games, I think, in all competitions this year, 2 out of 12 since 2023 began. So they were really hurting, and Graham Potter, the manager, is really under it. But they scored 2 goals, and when you look at the XG and you look at the stats and you look at all the flow, I mean, they did enough to win that game. Christian Pulisic, though, this is the big news, got back into the team. He came in as a sub towards the end, and there was a moment where him and Gio Reyna Gio was defending him when he was on the ball, which was pretty cool. And there's a nice photo of that online that you can find. But let's talk about Christian Pulisic. There's some question marks about whether you bring him in, given that he's just coming back. Do you want to add a long trip for him into his recovery mode, Heath Pearce? I mean, I think you bring him in for sure. You get him back into the group, and there's different vibes around the U.S. team as opposed to Chelsea, where it's so cutthroat and there's so many guys going for something. It might be nice to go back into familiar setting with some of your friends, frankly, and to kind of get those vibes going again in a positive way. What do you think about Christian?
Yeah, I think, he's used to travel. And again, if you're him and you're going through the rough winter months that are generally what life is like this time of year in the UK, and you've spent a lot of time off the field, you probably want to change the pace. You probably want to change the scenery. You probably want a break. You want to go back into being with your friends and your peers, and you get maybe a chance to see family or other friends. And I always looked at it as that, right? No matter when it was good, it was great to go back to the national team. And when it was bad in your club environment, you got called in, it was, great to just get a break from there, because look, London is home for him, and it has been for quite some time now. But that, just having that change of scenery can be really, really good for just your mental health, right? Whether he plays or not, whether you decide to use him or not, is irrelevant. I don't think, a guy like him, who, if they're all, a bunch of them are flying through London, they'll put him on a private plane. It'll be a pretty efficient process, or flying first class. It's not going to be that big of a lift for him personally, and something that he's used to, that I think there's more upside than downside. If you're Chelsea, on the other hand, though, you're probably going like, how do we, I know we don't have a GM right now, but that's generally what our general manager would be doing, is having that conversation with them to say, with the coach, to say, how do we manage this guy's minutes to make sure that when he comes in, you're protecting our asset. You're putting our players and our club's needs at the forefront. And then there's probably a little bit of healthy tension there. If it was a bigger game, you'd go, well, we're using him because he's a national team player and it's a national team window. But this is probably one where you can build that relationship and be a little more strategic in it, and make sure that the club knows that, like, he's going to come in, he's going to be part of the team. We're going to keep his load light. What are some things that you would like to see? Does he need more intense trainings? Do you want him out? Like, give us your periodization plan, and we'll match that up with how we think that we can use him, but we're going to bring him in, type of thing. What about you?
I wonder too, with regard to Gio Reyna. I mean, just using him as an example, not playing much, but now he got those 85 minutes against Chelsea. It looks like he might get to start against Schalke in the Riviera Derby this weekend, which is a big one away from home. And that'll obviously be a good experience, high intensity, and he'll be probably pushed to the limits in some ways, especially because, as I mentioned, he looked a little bit tired, but totally understandable given that he hasn't gotten a lot of game minutes lately. I wonder if there's a periodization plan for Gio as well, and I assume there's going to be some types of conversations. I wonder, though, if Gio gets another 90 minutes or close to it, do you consider maybe even starting him in these games? Because if you bring him in that's one. But I wondered going in if Anthony Hudson was like, hey, you haven't really played lately. Just stay with your club. Try to build some goodwill during this international break. Continue to whatever. There might be something going on behind the scenes with Edin Terzic and not getting those minutes. Maybe it'd be better and more worthwhile for you to go and kind of earn whatever you needed to in that 7 to 10 days, instead of flying to play us in games that we should win without you. But then there's something about bringing him back into the group. So it gets a little complicated. But now that he's actually playing and we'll get some majority of the minutes, maybe it's a good reason to bring him in. And you can't use that, well, you're not playing thing to not bring him in. I know that they had a discussion, so I wonder what that looks like. But it looks like the roster is going to drop. What we're hearing is next Wednesday. So we're going to be excited to do an emergency podcast for everybody with regard to that. But any thoughts on Gio coming in? I mean, you're feeling pretty good that he's going to, you're the one that knows all the Gio news.
Yeah, I don't know all the Gio news, Jimmy. But what I will say is that I know that he's a young kid that's been through a ton. Some of it his own doing, a lot of it his own doing, a lot of it not his own doing. But he's still a young kid. And I think about, the decisions I was making when I was 20 years old and living in Europe, and how I reacted to, give
us some details.
It wasn't necessarily that. Like I wasn't really a big partier. Like, I would have a night out when it was the right appropriate time and window for recovery and whatever, but I wasn't like never during the week or anything like that. But for me, it was more so like, even when I started my career there, I was like, first game played well, second game was man of the match, third game subbed out at halftime, right? And that to me is the indicator of like where I was at in my life. Like, solid, high, got too high, subbed out at halftime, thought I became this like crazy playmaker. The next game I turned over every pass, they subbed me out at halftime. And when I think about that through the lens of then getting subbed out and how I felt, the embarrassment of being subbed at halftime, those types of things, how I would react to that now differently, like now I would just go up to the coach and punch him in the face because I'm a 38-year-old man and you can't tell me anything. But back then you internalize all that and it affects your mood and your day-to-day life and whatever, that I just think through the lens of somebody who has a lot to learn and a lot of growing up to do. There's certain things about him that aren't going to change in his life, right? There's certain ways that he's going to struggle with his whole life. But he's certainly at an age where he can start to shape and build good habits. We have so much resource around us now that, like, if you are present in yourself, and I know, Jimmy, you're very much about mental health and things like that. If you are present and honest, you do have an opportunity to I don't want to say change, but grow. And he's got plenty of time left to see his upside as a player and to grow as a person and a teammate.
Okay, I appreciate everything that you said, but I do want to get back to what happened at halftime. Did the coaches tell you? Did the coaches tell you like give you anything? Did they give you any?
No, I played horrible. Like
no, I know that you know that, but like it's one thing when you know it, and then your coach confirms it for you by subbing you out at halftime. You're like, God damn! I mean, did they pull you aside and like try to
nothing?
Not basically baby you, but just like, hey, you don't look sharp today. We're gonna bring in somebody else.
I honestly don't even. Yeah, I don't even remember the name of this. I honestly don't even remember the name of the coach that I had when I first got there. It was I think John something, but like he only lasted 6 months. I came in January, halfway through the season. This was like March to June is how they play the second half of those seasons, right? In Denmark. And I remember getting subbed out then and being like, oh man, like this is the first thing, right? I had just featured all the highs, new young American, newspapers talking about me, man of the match in the second game. Like, wow, this guy, I mean, I ate this guy alive in the second half. So much so, Jimmy, that like I had no choice but to be full of myself come the third game. And guess what? I was full of myself. I played horribly. They subbed me out at halftime, and you know how it is. Like, it wasn't good. You hope that maybe you were just not as incrementally worse than others around you, and that you would get hey, you got 15 minutes to get it together. But when there's just like, when somebody is basically like, there's no turning back from how bad this guy's playing right now, that's what it feels like. And so then you go into but at 20, I was pissed, but then I was also isolated in a place where I was like, the only way to prove this is get on the training pitch and prove that I should keep going, right? And they immediately during that time too, there was a second left back that they brought in during the same window, which I was worried about. And so there was just a lot for me to work through, but that's what helped to shape me to one, like, say I've got to be in control of my own self. But in real time, I was pissed. And when I was talking to the coaches, I was probably visibly showing my frustration to them, right? Like you have the ability to hide, which is what we talk about with Gio on the field when, he flails his arms. Like he knows he's doing that. He's not just like you're making statements.
That's a choice. It's a choice. And that's what you learn when you get older. Like, you're making a choice here.
Yeah. And maybe it's spur of the moment, but like, that like, even in reflection that like what you were doing. And so I did a lot of that stuff, but I learned to know that like, probably not the right way to do it. You have to pick and choose your moments. But then sometimes you get handed, a shitty hand, or by hand, I mean like a crappy coach or a bad circumstance. And you've got to learn that you've got no control and how you control your mentality at that point, right? Doesn't matter how good you train. Doesn't matter how good you're doing, right? Gio Reyna scored, 4 goals in 5 games or something like that, or 3 games or some sort of
3 and 3.
3 and 3. And then all of a sudden it's like bench. Like, that's going to make you feel a certain type of way where you're like, well, now it doesn't matter what I do. Right. And so you go through all that, and he's young enough that he can sort of learn if he's got the right people around him. I don't know if that was necessarily the case previously, telling him what he needs to hear. Hopefully moving forward, he does, right? Build a new network, a new group of people that, sometimes you need a hug. Sometimes you need somebody to be like, yo, that was really bad.
Shit.
Yeah. You not only as a player, but also all this other stuff, like, I can see it. I'm watching on TV. That's going to hurt you in the long run, as opposed to appeasing people, which sometimes they need, which is like, yeah, like they screwed you and that type of thing, right? Like that's when I go to my mom and she tells me I played a great game every game in my entire career when I need that. But then you also need other people around you, like I did, that go like, yeah, man. Yeah, you sucked. When people pat you on the back when you go to sit down for the second half, and they're looking at you like, man, you blew that chance.
Yeah. Those are tough. Those are tough conversations, because as I mentioned before, when somebody confirms how you were feeling and they were watching it from the outside, and that's exactly how you feel on the inside.
It's your elevator story with Casey Keller, which is like, you wanted to feel good, and then all of a sudden he was like, you're right. Or whatever,
Yeah, I was looking for a mom unconditional hug, or unconditional love hug from Casey Keller, and I did not get it. So shout out to Casey for giving it to me straight. Right, that's the real deal. And he was embarrassed too, right? Because we had lost that game, and it didn't go well for him as he was trying to compete to make sure he was the number 1 for the U.S. team. All right, we're going to take our first break of In Soccer We Trust. No, Heath, I'm interrupting you. When we come back, we'll get back to what Heath wanted to say, and we'll talk about the CONCACAF Champions League, because it didn't go so well for a few teams.
Phenomenal! Absolutely magisterial here! Artilharia do Campeonato Brasileiro! Colpisce ancora! Golazo!
Welcome back, everybody, to In Soccer We Trust. We are Chuckless today. I'm Jimmy Conrad alongside Heath Pearce, and we are diving into all the fun stuff, including, I know we talked Champions League and Gio Reyna and Christian Pulisic, but Matt Turner is getting the start for Arsenal today in the Europa League. That was a little bit on the fence because we thought, will Mikel Arteta, the manager of Arsenal, now that they're into the knockout rounds, rely on his number one, Aaron Ramsdale? But he's gone with Matt Turner. So fair play there in Portugal right now, taking on Sporting Club de Portugal. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if we'll keep it. We don't want to be any spoiler alerts if you want to watch it later. But you do know, at the very least, that Matt Turner is getting the nod in between the sticks. So that is very exciting. All right, Heath, I interrupted you before that break. I don't know where you're going to go with anything. But I loved your insight about some of the toughness that has to be manifested in you at some point if you're going to survive in this game.
Yeah. By the way, the thing that I wanted to say that I came back with was it was just a random thought of where are they now when we were thinking about tough love. And I ran into Marcus Hanneman. For those that don't know, he was on Jimmy's 2006 World Cup roster. Not a lot of caps for the national team, but went to 2 World Cups. It's the dream scenario. It's like everybody who wants to be the 4th assistant for a club, because it's like, well, I know I'm going to survive like 4 or 5 club changes. I get to jump into meetings. I get to leave early. No one's really,
it's like the 12th man in basketball.
Yeah. And
he's the third goalkeeper.
He's a pilot now, and like he flies salmon to like things throughout the Washington area, and like skis during the mornings, and then like flies salmon seasonally, and does like Sounders
that surprises me.
Sounders radio things, and was doing TV stuff and all that. But it was a random thought of like tough love, because he was a guy that I always liked listening to, because he had a different career path, very non-traditional career path, but went on to do really well at Reading in England, and then was at Wolves for a bit, but kind of started not in Major League Soccer, then was in Major League Soccer, and jumped. It was just like a unique guy that brought, I thought, unique advice, because it wasn't just the traditional player who, you don't want advice from the guy who just went up his whole career, even though our versions of up all include a lot of downs, but like he was somebody that I respected and randomly ran into him.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that guy. He was somebody that if I was in that elevator, it would have been him. He's an unconditional love guy. He's got a great big bear hug, and he's thoughtful. I think he'd still be honest with you about how you performed, but he would still kind of, there was a level of empathy from him that I didn't see in a lot of other players, especially at that level, right? Where you're always kind of competing against each other to get minutes for the US team. So yeah, shout out to Redbird. That's his nickname, because he always had like dip in his favorite dip was Redbird.
And also, by the way, he was behind Brad Guzan in 2010 as he wasn't. I don't think he was the backup in 2010. I think Brad Guzan was the backup, right?
Yeah, I think he's just always Marcus Hanneman was kind of like, then Nick Romano took over the role as the number 3 goalkeeper. But it's cool. I mean, they worked their way to get that type of respect. Unfortunately, it didn't turn into valuable minutes per se, but their impact was still very important on the team. Well, let's talk about the CONCACAF Champions League, because I alluded to it before our first break, and we'll start with the one that went first. Austin FC went down to Haiti and ended up losing 3-0. And again, it was another performance from Austin FC where a player, Amro Tarek, who just got beat to 2 headers. He could do a little bit better defensively there. Then he had one of the craziest own goals of all time, where the ball popped out and he tried to clear it out wide, and it was a side netting volley, which was pretty sick. And so Austin FC has 2 losses so far out of 3 games this season, and you could really pinpoint one player that kind of sabotaged them in the game against St. Louis in their opening game of MLS, and then in this game, another defender that didn't do particularly well. But they had Nick Lima, who usually plays right back and has caps for the U.S., playing it right back. He was playing center back. So they were definitely thin in some different areas. Sebastian Driussi didn't play. But Josh Wolf, the coach, came out and said that he takes responsibility for it. They just weren't mentally prepared to go down into a hostile environment and get a result. Like, it's not, and we'll talk about the other ones that went down to Tigres and went down to Alianza and did grind out the results. And that was Orlando City and Philadelphia Union, respectively. But Austin, this was their first ever time to play in a tournament outside of MLS, and they didn't show very well, Heath Pearce.
Yeah, remember how I just went through this story about like you sub at halftime because it's not going to get better. And then this was an example of it not getting better because 2 minutes into the next half, there was that own goal, and that was one of the most wild own goals where it wasn't like sliding into your own goal to clear a ball away, or like it bumps off of you or deflects, or, one of these things. I mean, that was a straight, with enough time to put it anywhere, you put it back, side netting into your own goal. That was rough. But you're right. I think the hardest part for anybody that hasn't played CONCACAF or in a diverse range of environments, you go anywhere south of the United States of America, whether that's the Caribbean, whether that's Central South America, it's a different environment. It's a different level of passion. It's a different level of hostility. It's not always that way, but it can be. And Major League Soccer, being that it is that with Liga MX, the sort of gold standard in terms of where people want to play, the quality of life on the field, off the field, that people bring a little something extra.
Yeah, they do.
And it's something that you can't watch in a video. You can't watch in game tape. You can't watch. There is a little bit of, I'm trying to be mindful with my words because I don't want it to sound disrespectful, but there is that sort of David versus Goliath type of mentality that comes into these things of like, we're coming into this as the underdog. Let's go out and punch him right in the face. And it happens a lot. It's not just Austin that's going through, it gave up that result. It's happened a lot. It's happened to us at the national team level. It's happened to us at the youth national team level. It's happened at the club level across the board. It is just something you've got to be ready for. And the game comes quick. The game gets a little faster, a little more feisty, and they weren't able to get up for it.
Yeah, I think one of the skills that when I'm coaching, and I know you and I talk about it, not necessarily on camera, but off of it, it's game management. Like the skill, and I know we talked about it with regard in reference to the U.S. and their game against Holland in particular, managing the game and understanding how to solve problems when the things that you want to do are being taken away. How do you then exploit what they're giving you? And when I think about this Austin FC game in particular, they didn't manage the game very well. And Josh could have made a sub at halftime to take him off and to protect him, but he didn't have any depth. So now you're putting probably another player out of position into that to hope that it gets better. And you hope that the guy with a halftime is going to respond, and then he ends up what of an own goal. If you haven't seen it, go look it up. It's quite special.
Somebody in the comments already said, Jimmy, explain it.
I mean, also I would say too that when I look at this game though, and the games that you're mentioning, well, I'll actually bring it back just for this game. All the mistakes that were made from Austin FC's perspective, and this is where I think they can gain a little bit of perspective because and lose some of the emotion, is the fact that all of the goals given up are correctable, right? The guy just needs to be a little bit tighter here. The entry pass into, Nick Lima could have closed down the one entry pass over the top. He didn't. He let the guy get across. Little things that are easily correctable. And I think that's a promising sign for Austin and just for MLS teams in particular in these competitions, where it's just, okay, it wasn't like we got outplayed, or that now we could talk about Tigres and Orlando, where Orlando survived down at the El Vulcan, the volcano where Tigres play their stadium. But in this one, I just thought that these are easy fixes, right? Yeah, they got a couple chances, but it wasn't like they were overwhelmed in anything. Now what I wanted to bring up when you were saying before about going down there in these hostile environments, I think for certain clubs, of course, and maybe this is shifting even for our Liga MX teams, is the fact that there was, when we were playing, it felt more like if you lost to an MLS team or you lost to it was embarrassing. Like, oh my God, Americans don't even know how to play the sport, right? It was still kind of in that space. And there was no way they were going to do everything they possibly could to make sure they didn't lose to an American team. And now that's shifting a little bit to your David and Goliath. So you go down to Haiti and you play a smaller club that a lot of people haven't heard of before. And they go and when you look at the result without really knowing how it played out, you're like, yeah, that's an ass slapping, So that's not a good look for Austin FC and for the league, of course. But that one felt more like these guys want to just prove that they're better than MLS in a different type of way, and more David versus Goliath. But when you think about the Mexican league teams and when we play against them, it is like completely beneath them to even lose to us. And that's changing, right? Everything's starting to level out a bit. And obviously with the Sounders winning the CONCACAF Champions League last season for the first time, hopefully that'll happen again. But let's pivot now to Tigres versus Orlando, because Orlando did go down there and manage the game, but they needed their goalkeeper, Pedro Gallesi, to stand on his head and make a couple good saves. And, if I wonder, so here's my thing. It ends up 0-0, so they're going to go back to Orlando for leg 2. But I wonder what that Orlando team does if they had given up that first goal. can they manage it and keep it at 1-0, or would Tigres go on to score 3, very similar to what the Haitian team did to Austin? That's what I'm interested in. Like, what version of Orlando would we have seen? Could they have just kept it at 1-0? And I don't know if they could have, because I just think that would have opened up the floodgates. So that's where I'm a little bit like, Tigres was the better team on the night. They might be the better team in leg 2, but you can't, count out this Orlando team that won the Open Cup last year and definitely know how to manage these types of tournaments. And then I want to get into Philly, who I thought were actually the better team against Alianza down in El Salvador, created better chances, didn't take their chances, but looked like the better team. And then Vancouver won 5-0 against Real España from Honduras. But they were Vancouver, the only team to score out of all the other games from MLS's perspective. Nobody else scored. So I don't know if that's a concern for you or which game you want to focus on, Heath, but yeah, Austin's got some work, but I think all the other, well, I can't say Tigres and Orlando. That one's a bit of a coin flip for me, but I think Philly will get through at home in leg 2, and obviously Vancouver is going to go through.
Yeah, I think if you look at contextually, 0-0s away from home, like, you got to be pretty happy about that, right?
Totally.
But Vancouver getting their job done at home, and then you obviously have same thing if LAFC can play a 0-0 against LDA or La Liga Deportiva Alajuelense, and
look at you.
And, I actually, funny enough, a friend of mine had grown up in their system. Actually, I don't know if maybe you know him. Do you know Kurt Morsink?
Yeah, of course. He played with me in Kansas City.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So Kurt, so we went to high school together at IMG, and he was at the soccer academy and did some training with us in the residency program, and he came out of that youth system. So one of the first jerseys I had ever had gifted to me was that club. Was prideful that I knew somebody other than Saprissa at the time. But yeah, if they can get a 0, they're happy. Yes, they've got a ton of firepower, but you go away from home, you want to be able to get that type of result. And then so I think really when I'm looking at this, it's essentially only Austin that I think is in trouble. They're going to have a big hill to climb. I do think Orlando could maybe work something. But even if they're not the better team at home, something different,
Yeah, and with Golazo between the sticks, I mean, the guy's an incredible goalkeeper and definitely challenging for MLS Goalkeeper of the Year every season.
Yeah.
So if he stands on his head like he does pretty consistently, they're going to always have a chance. But if Andre Pierre-Gignac, the number 10 and captain for Tigres, gets his finishing boots on, he found himself in a couple of good spots in leg 1. It could be lights out. And I'm curious. That should be a great game. I'm actually really looking forward to that one the most. But to your point, I mean, LAFC is going to be a force to be reckoned with as well. So I'm excited to see how they do. Really quick about Kurt Morsink, and then we'll get into the games that we're looking forward to this weekend for all of our players, both home and abroad. He was my teammate in Kansas City, and I was captain there at the time. And I remember there was a training. And in some ways, I want to apologize to him. And I don't know, maybe you can tell me whether I should apologize to him or not, Heath. We don't talk as much as we once did, which is normal when you don't play on the same team anymore. But there was a moment where the starters were resting. We had the game the day before, so we're there doing recovery. And so we're watching. You know how this goes. The first team watches the second teamers play, which is, having been on the second team side, you're like, can these guys just not be here? Because you're trying to compete with them. Yeah, to get on the field and having them watch and judge you, whatever. It's you're going to be judged by somebody at some point. But in terms of the dynamics of a team, it just felt like I don't need these guys around judging me, watching me. Like I'm whatever. So that was me as a younger player, as an older player, whatever. I was playing more, so it wasn't as big of a deal. But Morsink was on he's in the second team. He's training. And I remember he did something where he just kind of dogged it. Like he didn't give everything that he had. And I said something during, like, off from the sideline, and he was embarrassed, and I guess he should have been, right? Because I didn't just say it to him. I said it to, when you kind of just throw out those comments. And afterwards, he confronted me in the locker room in front of everybody, and he's crying, and he's upset, and to a point where I clearly triggered something in him. Whether he was trying to gain my approval or whatever it was, I know that he looked up to me, and he had mentioned that was the case. And as captain, obviously, I tried to do a good job of mentoring the younger guys. And so he got on my face, and I was just not empathetic at all. I gave him the Casey Keller. Now, I will say, elevator Casey Keller. But ultimately, I said to him in front of the group, like, there's a standard here, and there's an expectation of how you should play and how you should conduct yourself, whether it's in a game or whether it's this Sunday training with nothing on it. Like, that's what's going to make you a pro for a long time. And that's, even though I made a comment that was kind of jokey and maybe kind of shitty, and I shouldn't have maybe said that in front of everybody and just pulled you aside and said it. I was making sure I was using you as an example, but that message got to everybody. And now that you're here confronting me, and he's crying, dude, like he's upset. And he's like yelling at me. We're yelling back and forth at each other. And I'm like, this is the standard. This is the expectation. And so, yeah, I guess I could have handled it a little bit better. But at the same time, I thought I was providing a valuable lesson on what it takes to be a good pro. So I don't know. I guess I'll send him a text after. I feel bad. I feel bad saying after that. Anyway, we got our second break of In Soccer We Trust. We know you love all the breaks here because they're so much fun. It'll be a quick one. And when we return, Heath is going to jump in on this story, and then we're going to preview all the big games from this weekend. So don't go anywhere.
Welcome to the UEFA Europa League on Paramount Plus.
What a night!
Your home for more ultra-competitive, world-class soccer. Where Europe's elite and soccer's Cinderellas pump out that one-of-a-kind white-knuckle excitement that grows with every cut, every cross, and each and every... The UEFA Europa League. Stream every match live exclusively on Paramount Plus.
Welcome back, everybody, to In Soccer We Trust. I just want to remind everybody to not miss a second of action from the greatest club competition on earth, the Champions League, and also the Europa League, which is happening right now on this fabulous Thursday. Follow the biggest stars from the world of soccer like Lionel Messi, even though he's out now, Karim Benzema, Victor Osimhen, and Erling Haaland as they try to clinch the most prestigious prize in the game, the Champions League trophy. Stream every match from the Champions League and the Europa League live only on Paramount Plus, and you can try 1 month free with the promo code ADVANCE. So go make that happen and go enjoy all these games, especially as we get deeper and deeper into the knockout rounds. All right, I'm Jimmy Conrad alongside Heath Pearce. We are Chuckless today. He is actually doing the Europa League coverage in studio in London with some fabulous other friends of ours on Paramount Plus. Mm-hmm. But Heath, you wanted to chime in on this Kurt Morsink story. Kurt Morsink getting a lot of love today here on the
Yeah, it's crazy how these stories come up, but they're real ones, and they're applicable to sort of, again, some of our players, young and old, that are going through all of this now. And when we think about confronting and holding people accountable, it's really important. Mine was actually with Zarek Valentin. So I think you did the right thing there. And sometimes you hold your ground, but the human in you wants to sort of, give him a hug at that point. It was against Kansas City. We gave up a goal in the end of the game that we dropped. I think we dropped 2 points that were super important. And we got into the locker room and I went off, and he went and was very upset and went into a stall and came back, and I took him over the edge, and he was a rookie, again, teenager.
I was there. I was on the team with you. Dude.
And I remember it may have been.
Was it in Kansas City or was it?
It was in Kansas City because I kicked a hole in the wall and then pretended like it was there already. And it was a little tiny hole, and I was pissed off because it was just we were grinding. We were so close to being good that season.
I remember. That was the one away game I went to because I was in concussion protocol, and I flew to that one. Yeah. And we were up. Mariano Trujillo had scored, and then we were holding on to the lead, but they were pounding. And I remember we gave up a really soft goal.
Yeah, and it was a little misclearance of not following a man or something like that. It was something basic. Really something basic. And I remember just lighting up, and the whole time I held my ground, and this kid was living with me at the time. We were and I refused to sort of back down from it. And I don't know, I would love to follow up with him. We still keep in touch with him, but I never followed up on that moment of
did that help?
Did I screw you up? Did I make you worse? Because at that age, you don't know, right? Maybe now, and he looks back, he might look at it differently, but you hope that you're doing the right thing in that moment. And I felt like I was, because I wanted that to be a learning moment for him, who was such a talented rookie, for us, that he was getting consistent minutes, was, a generation Adidas player, highly drafted, highly regarded, that I was this kid has the potential to be something, but you're not going to get that if that mentality is not there. So I don't know. Did you do the right thing? Did you not? You have to.
I don't know. I'm going to follow up with.
We're going to write a list of people that pop on for 5 minutes, and we ask them did I hurt you?
Did I? Yeah. How much therapy did I make you go into with this particular moment in your life? I'd like to think, though, there's a part of me that doesn't feel bad about it, because, to your point, if they want to get to where they want to go, then you have to hold them to that standard. You can't hold them to, let's say, a college level standard or
And we've both been lit up. We've been lit up by veterans, whether we agree or not. We've been lit up when we were on our younger years by somebody that was just yo, that's not good enough,
Yeah. I harken back to when I was a rookie and just, yeah, it's so, I don't know. We can get into those stories later because we've already done a couple of them. So we'll save that for another show. Well, let's talk about this upcoming weekend. We got some big games, and this is going to be the last time before the Nations League roster has been announced. So obviously there's some potential injury concerns. Hopefully nobody gets hurt. And maybe Anthony Hudson and his staff, the interim manager for the U.S. men's national team, already has who he's going to bring in. I'm guessing probably in the 25 to 26 range. We're going to see players that are going to get called in. But this is their last look before any final decision. So if they're hedging on anybody, or like maybe Daryl Dike versus Brandon Vasquez kind of jumps to mind, you know, it's going to be interesting to see where they lean, or maybe they bring in both of those guys. So here are all the games, Heath. I don't know if you want to just jump in when you're ready to get in. But Lille versus Lyon. So you have Timo Weah playing potentially at left back again. That game is happening tomorrow on Friday. We got Leeds versus Brighton, obviously an important game. Very curious to see where Brendan Aronson, if he starts, if he's going to be central like he was in the
Jesse
last
Armas
game.
just confirmed that he's out from that staff. I mean, not Jesse Marsh. Chris Armas. Confirmed is out off the staff.
Wow. I wonder if he's coming to U.S. Soccer then.
He didn't confirm that. Leeds United confirmed that.
Yeah. So Armas is out. That's not a big surprise. I mean, he got hired
here. It's something the club can maybe explain better. That was his answer.
Yeah. So looking forward to hearing a little bit more there. I mean, the new manager, Javi Gracia, he's going to have his own guys. And if Armas just got hired by Jesse Marsh, just kind of bad timing for Chris Armas. So we'll keep everybody up to date on what he ends up doing. We got Fulham versus Arsenal. That game is on Sunday. That should be a cracking affair. Obviously, Arsenal in the running for winning the Premier League for the first time in a long time. 2004? The Invincibles, the last time they won it. And Fulham obviously still scraping in there to maybe get in a Europa League spot. So that would be very cool to see how they're going to perform. And I was at the game, the reverse fixture, back in August when Arsenal ended up beating them 2-1. Mitrovic ended up scoring. It was 1-1 for a while, then they scored on a set piece, Arsenal, to win that and get all 3 points. Crystal Palace versus Manchester City at Selhurst Park. Chris Richards got to play against Manchester United a couple times, so maybe we'll see if this happens. Patrick Vieira, the manager for Crystal Palace, if he's going to bring him into the team. Maybe he just likes playing him against Manchester teams. I don't think it's going to happen. They have Patrick Anderson's back in. He's healthy, and it's been harder for Richards to get some minutes. But I do expect him to be on the Nations League roster. Valencia versus Osasuna. Yunus Musa did not play against Barcelona last week, so will he reclaim his starting spot? Something to keep an eye on. Celta Vigo taking on Rayo Vallecano. Luca de la Torre, great form, playing well. Should get the start. We'll see. Joe Scally going to go against RB Leipzig away from home with Borussia Mönchengladbach. Got Schalke Dortmund, some more minutes for Gio. Swansea versus Middlesbrough. Zach Steffen is doing well with them. They're up the charts, and they're in a good position to at least get in the promotion playoff in the championship to get back up to the Premier League. You got West Brom versus Huddersfield. Daryl Dike looks like he's in fantastic form. I'd love to see him getting called back into camp, but we'll see if that makes it happen.
Scored again midweek.
He did. Yeah. He did. And he actually had another sequence too, where it's just like good. And the goalkeeper made a save, but he had scored that. That would have been highlight reel and something you're rolling for the rest of your life. And then you got Alkmaar versus Groningen. So you have Mihalovic versus Ricardo Pepi. So some games to keep an eye on. I don't know which one stands out for you or which player you want to see in particular, Heath Pearce, but those are some of the big games. And obviously there's a whole roster of MLS games here as they get into week 3. And I'm excited to see how it continues to grow on Apple TV.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's still around. I continue to focus on like forms of strikers, right? So Ricardo Pepi playing this weekend, Daryl Dike playing this weekend, again Brandon Vasquez playing, Jesus Ferreira. Can he actually make a case long term to where he fits into the equation? So all of these things where I think we're still on the early end. All of them, by the way, are 22 or how old's Brandon Vasquez? He's older, but like
he might be 24 maybe.
Yeah. But most of them, still quite a bit projects for the future, which is exciting. Taylor Booth now being linked to some even bigger clubs, Ajax, for example, and outside of the Eredivisie. So not sure what his status is, but it's one of those things that if you're the coach, you're going into this kind of more on like a progress report of injuries and updates to say, okay, I've got 26 or 27 players to bring into camp. Who am I doing? Because all the players we're mentioning are part of the pool, but prioritizing what you're trying to get out of this camp, I think, is really important, whether that's new looks, whether that's results only, because they do need to get the results. And do you have the best team while also sort of moving forward? But it comes back to every time I think about it through that lens, that's sort of a little bit of a club team lens and less so about like the national team's about the players deserving to be there now. and the deserving to be there and playing today.
Mm-hmm.
And not about like, Jimmy Conrad gets called in. Yeah. What's his purpose if you're not 19? That's sort of the narrative now, or 20 or 21. There's also like people that are deserving to be in the national team because they're the best in their position regardless of age right now, so it's a little bit hard to prioritize, but it's mostly for me strikers that I'm looking at going into the weekend. Actually,
what about center backs though? What about center backs? Because you have, I think Richards comes in, even though he hasn't been first choice for a little bit. You want to see him. Cameron Carter-Vickers playing for Celtic and playing some big games and helping them do well this season and winning Scottish Cups and all that good stuff. And
also Mark McKenzie. Mark McKenzie, it's been
Eric
almost
Brown getting more minutes for Troyes and getting good competition. Obviously going to continue to get better. You got Zimmerman and Long and everybody.
When you think about those new guys, Jimmy, it's a lot of guys that we haven't seen consistently in the national team, right? Cameron Carter-Vickers, Eric Palmer-Brown, it's Mark McKenzie, Chris Richards. They're all like budding stars. Miles Robinson's
back from injury.
Like these are all guys that are for the future, and you want to get them in and sort of see just where are they at, because again, we know that you might be great at the club level and you might not ever be good at the national team level. There is just that reality, and it doesn't always translate as like a 1-for-1 trade. So yeah, seeing that.
I would love to see a mix of Miles Robinson for sure, Chris Richards, and Cameron Carter-Vickers. Mark McKenzie's been solid. Eric Palmer-Brown, let's just like bring him in. It's a good time to bring him in and see what it looks like. And kind of knowing what you saw in January and kind of the known quantities already. These are games that we should be able to take care of. No problem. Another one too, I think is interesting is not Anthony Robinson. I think he would get the start, but kind of who we're bringing in that maybe impressed in the January camp. John Tolkien jumps to mind. If Taylor Booth is healthy, obviously you want to bring him in. But the right back spot, do you go with a Serginho Dest and actually start him? Because I think you bring him in for sure, but would you go with the Joe Scally? Like, I'm just kind of curious. Okay, you might bring these guys in, but then who's your 11? Who are you trying to build around him? And it gets back to something we talk about a lot. Like, why are you going with that player over someone else? Like, what is it? Are you really building towards the future with knowing that Joe Scally could be our guy moving forward, even though Serginho Dest isn't that much older than he is? Or can Serginho? There's a lot of questions, and it's unfortunate that we have an interim manager, because it would be nice to have somebody full time that's starting to shape this into what they want it to look like. Now, obviously, as we've mentioned plenty of times, and as we know, things are going to change, right? Players are going to have different runs of form. Some are going to grow quicker than others. Some are going to be settled and really blossoming in whatever club they're at. And others are going to struggle and not get named to Champions League rosters and not get their way and have to get transferred from Germany to Holland.
It's a big pool of players that got a lot of competition, and there's going to be a lot. I promise you, come 2026, there's going to be far more. There was a couple shock omissions in this last one, or admissions when I think about like Shaq Moore or whatever that weren't necessarily part of things previously. But what I'm suggesting is that 2026 there will be a lot more debate and conversation and controversy around players that deserve to be there in the eyes of many, but weren't selected, versus it being like a one-off, like random. I went with my gut. It's going to be like, but this guy plays every game in the Premier League. And you're like, yeah, but this guy plays every game in the Premier League, but at a bigger club or at a higher level, or I like him. And that's the world we're heading towards as this pool continues to get quite a bit bigger.
I love that. That's the evolution that we've been craving for so long, Heath Pearce. All right, that is the end of the show. I'm calling it here. So on behalf of producer Des and producer Alex, and I guess Charlie, Chuckwagon, Davies, and Heath Pearce, I am Jimmy, Conrad, Cream Cheese, Trash Can Conradinho, Conrad, also known as Jim. There's just so many nicknames.
According to Charlie.
According to Charlie, I'm Cheese Cream, but and we got Heath Hollywood, but we'll give him a hard time the next time we see him. Anyway, have a great weekend, everybody. Enjoy it. Watch those games. Hopefully everybody plays well and everybody stays healthy, and then we'll come back with a couple of shows for you next week, and we cannot wait. We'll see you soon. Later.